Okay, today we are Friday, March 3rd, 4th?
Yeah.
We're March 3rd. We're in Montreal. We're live with Mr. Adam Caplan of AC Radio.
Yes, sir.
So he's the host of AC Radio. It is a fight industry focused radio / podcast / YouTube channel / Instagram / TikTok / are you on TikTok too?
I'm on TikTok. I don't use it as much. I'm mostly on Instagram and YouTube. That's my game.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like I could interact with people the most. I feel like TikTok is just aimless scrolling, not enough like interaction.
You're not wrong.
Like in Instagram, like I've made friends in the industry through this. We go on Instagram lives, we collaborate, we share each other's things. It's like on TikTok, I find it very impersonal. And like as a podcaster, it's a personal thing. So like for TikTok, it's not for me.
TikTok, I had a video last week. I posted it. I didn't mean for it to be controversial, and Jesus, it came across as controversial, I guess. 145,000 views on the TikTok itself.
Okay.
All I basically said was, because I had a recruiter who came in last week or 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the labor shortage. You know, companies are having difficulty hiring right now. And basically, so what are some of the reasons? He goes, well, I think it's the fact the demographics are changing, the baby boomers are retiring, you know, it is a competitive landscape. And then I said, okay, well, here's some data. The government is a big competitor too for jobs, you know, so there's we have an office in Ottawa, and insurance brokers are in Ottawa. Some of them were not complaining, but going like, man, I can't compete with the government. They're offering these crazy salaries, pensions for life. I can't compete with that. That's all I said. I just said, look, the government is one of the competitors now competing for labor, and people lost their minds. It was very like split. Some people went, oh man, that's not good. And other people went, well, you need to pay your people more and you need to do this. I'm like, guys. I'm just commenting on an objective fact that they're now a bigger competitor than they were 5 years ago. And that's all I said. But anyways, apparently that's controversial. I was just trying to state a fact.
Well, I mean, how dare you speak facts in today's day? How dare you? You should be ashamed. It's not, that's not my realm though. That's like more of the socio-political things, and I like to focus on the fight game because that kind of dates back to like our true history as people. I think today we've kind of lost ourselves a bit, so it's all about the fight game. Funny you should say that. It is one thing we can get into. We have a whole list of questions and topics that we're going to cover. One of the things I will say, the UFC, it's a very, I guess you could say, controversial. A lot of people love Dana White. A lot of people think he's exploiting the fighters. Yeah. Well, one thing that I love about what he's done with the league, the UFC, is the fact that he goes, no politics. Don't come here. Don't bring your politics into the sports league. When people turn on the TV to watch a fight, they want to watch a fight. They want to watch the sports. Right. And I think that politics have come into, and I don't want to talk about politics at all today, but it's come into every realm of life today. So it's like, for example, if you turn on TSN, you turn on ESPN, it's like, I just want to watch some sports, man. Yes. The news cycle, it's so exhausting. You keep seeing these things and all the hate and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I just want to turn on a hockey game and not have to listen to any politics. And Dana White's done a great job with that. I think I tip my hat off to him for that. He goes, don't bring your politics into this league. You're not allowed. We're here to fight. We're here to entertain. And that's that. I don't know. I don't necessarily see it like that. I mean, Dana did obviously speak at a Trump rally, which is fine. That's
You're right.
That's his prerogative because it's his friend.
You're right.
That's great.
Yep.
He's also invited Trump ringside.
Yeah.
And also lets fighters like Colby Covington wear the MAGA hat and kind of play the role as a crazy Trumper and different things like that. But at the same time, I think what Dana does really well is for every shot he gives, he's also willing to take a few. And I think a lot of people don't actually believe that. But if you really think about it, he is in a controversial game. He's in a primal game. The UFC is like the safari. Like you could literally walk out there and see someone get killed. And that does make it controversial. But, going back to history, fighting is embedded in us.
Yes.
Every single person in this room thinks that if someone came in and tried to take our life, we could fight our way out of it. And that's most importantly why people are actually the most intrigued about it.
It is interesting you say this because, I mean, we can go back in history, look at the Romans in the Colosseum, there's always been this fascination. We're intrigued by watching conflict, human
Yes.
conflict, and fight each other. It's always been like this. I mean, hockey fights, boxing fights, UFC fights, people hitting each other on the football field. We like that conflict.
Some would say that if hockey lost fighting, it would lose a bit of hockey.
I'm in the camp that I do not want fighting I don't want them to get rid of fighting. And one of my buddies, he plays in the NHL. And I asked him quickly, this a few years ago, what's your opinion on that? He goes, I don't agree with, he doesn't fight himself. I think he's had one fight in the NHL.
Right.
But he goes, I don't agree with them getting rid of fighting. He goes, number one, I don't think they will.
Yeah.
And number two, I don't agree with it because it gets rid of the self-policing aspect of the sport. So you want to give a hit, you want to rock someone, and there's another tough guy on the opposing team, you might have to answer for that. You know what I mean? So that part there, I'm getting like shivers thinking about it. Just humans being humans, and your boys got your back, buddy. You can't hit them like that. Drop your mitts. Let's go.
And that's what I love about hockey. There's a universal language that isn't spoken about that happens constantly within every single game, in every moment. That is somebody who didn't grow up playing hockey, you don't catch on to. People don't understand why football players don't rip off their helmet and fight. That's just not it. But hockey players, there are guys that are specifically brought in to play a role. I think that hockey in itself has like a role-playing aspect to it that is almost far greater than any sport.
There's a code of conduct that I don't think they will ever get rid of. And I think they were trying to get rid of fighting. Not I think, I know, because of all the lawsuits, the CTE, concussions, and all that kind of stuff. And, Bettman, he's a lawyer by trade. So he's going to, and any sports league, they're going to take all these corporations, they're risk averse, right? So they're going to try and fix things up to basically, they don't want to be liable for these players having concussion issues or CTE later on in their lives and basically getting sued because, football got sued. I don't know what happened to the lawsuits. I think they settled very quietly. Like the NFL, I know for a fact, settled with a lot of ex-NFL players. They have concussion protocols now. There's all these types of things that they've done. But I don't think they'll get rid of the fighting. There's definitely a lot less fighting than there used to be. But there is I feel like it's gone too far. The pendulum has swung too far to the other side because now, remember like 20 years ago, remember in the 90s, you might be, how old are you, 28, 30?
31.
You're 31. Okay, so you might be a little bit too young. I'm 34.
Okay.
And in the 96, 97, there was Detroit versus Colorado. This was the first time I was old enough to appreciate watching the playoffs. These two teams killed each other.
Is this Waugh versus Osgood?
This is Waugh versus Osgood.
And McCarthy was on.
McCarthy was there. It all started with the hit. Claude Lemieux hit a guy from behind, busted. It was who did he hit? I forget the guy he hit. Busted his front teeth. They went to war. And man, these guys, it's like these teams hated each other. They actually hated each other. And it made for great entertainment. And you just don't see that as much anymore. Even Tortorella said this a few years ago. He goes, it was a playoff game. He goes, we're playing another team. He's like, he actually said this, there's no hate.
Yeah.
We're in the playoffs. Fuck these guys. Like, hate them, hit them.
100%.
I don't.
100%.
And I feel like the league has lost. It's definitely more skilled, but I feel like the league has lost a little bit of that in the NHL.
In the NHL, definitely, but I'll tell you, the NBA has lost that completely and entirely.
There's no Jordan. I mean, and
there's no beef. There's no rivalries. There's no Rasheed Wallace. There's no
Detroit Pistons.
Ron Artest running through the crowd. There's none of that. It's it's a lot more of like a tamed league. And you know what? I think that the guys in the NBA are some of like the most overrated and overly paid. And I'm not talking about the top 1%ers of the league. I'm talking about like the other 97%, not the top 3%. The rest of the 97 of them, they're all replaceable. And some of them are signing contracts that are ridiculous. And I actually wanted to mention it before coming on the show that we're going to talk about pay structure in the UFC. I think that the pay structure in the NHL is garbage. I think that for the amount of games that these guys play and the amount of, they're not pulling the load management card as much as the NBA, et cetera. And, this isn't a football team. There's how many guys on a hockey team? 12 guys?
Well, there's 12 forwards, and then there's 6 defensemen, 2 or 3 goalies.
Okay.
So it's that 12 plus 6, 18, 21. I think it's 22 players on a roster, I think.
But not everyone's getting the same amount of minutes.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Not even close.
The guys that are topping out at 15, 16, 17, 18 minutes a game or whatever it is, I don't think that they're nearly getting paid enough.
I mean, that's that's up there. But I think because they have a revenue sharing program, and I'm pretty sure, again, you know what? I don't even know the facts, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But I'm pretty sure they go 50-50, just like baseball. NBA, I don't know what it is. I'm almost positive NHL is 50-50, so 50 to the ownership, 50% to the players. And also, too, you got to look at revenues of the league, obviously, right? And the revenues of the NHL are far less than that of NFL and NBA. I mean, it's not even close, right? So there's that part to look into, too. But no, it's a good point you bring up. But here, let's get into some stuff. I'm going to look down on my cheat sheet here. Let's talk about you. So I met you a few years ago at Broccolini.
Yeah.
We had our KBD Insurance. We had our office in the Broccolini building, and the gym downstairs. You would always be giving those classes. You gave me a couple one-on-ones. You used to whoop my ass in the gym, basically you'd be like, shut up, do another set. And I'd have to do another set. So
I don't know if that sounds like me, but
in a good way.
Well, you were always a good client, a good hardworking guy in the gym. But yeah, that's where I started. I started in corporate fitness at the Broccolini building. And then from there, branched off independently as a trainer. I was working at Spar Training for a little bit. And then during the pandemic, the opening and closing of the gyms, I think that the personal training industry, pretty much the service industry as a whole, took such a beating.
It did.
And basically it was like I could try to find somewhere to work behind closed doors, or I could work in parks. But we live in Canada. It's going to get cold. So I'm going to have to segue here. So I decided to build a gym in my garage. I have my full clientele there now. I basically work out of there. I have all the equipment that I need. And then on top of that, I decided to start the podcast and record it there. So I bought all the equipment. I got my cameras, my softbox lighting, AV, blah, blah, blah equipment. And we're just going every single week, talking about MMA, talking about boxing, breaking down fights, analyzing them. And most importantly, pasting in that storyline that makes somebody like you who's in and out on the game get a quicker recap and refresh of what's going on.
Bite-sized content.
Yeah, not too much. Like, everyone wants to go the Rogan route and sit there for 3 hours. And I get it, of course. But most people, I don't know how many of them finish an actual Rogan episode anyways.
I would say I definitely watch I'm a big podcast guy. There's 4 podcasts that I listen to where I'll listen to the whole episode, and I'd say Joe Rogan's one of them. I don't listen to every episode, but I'd probably say only 1 out of 20. It's only if it's a guest I really like that I'll listen to the whole entire episode, but it's rare that I'll listen to the full 3-4 hour thing. 1 out of 20, 1 out of 25 episodes.
Long.
Yeah, it is very long. What made you want to get into the content business, I guess, the AC radio? Why did you start it?
So the first, where it all started was in about 2013 or 14. I was invited on an AM radio show called Main Event Radio. And it was more or less to expand their WWE segments into some MMA and boxing. And basically on like my first or second day there, they threw me in with an interview with Patrick Cote from Montreal, who fought Anderson Silva for the title, fought Tito Ortiz, like an absolute legend of the game. And they threw me in the deep end, and I asked them maybe 5 or 6 questions, and the episode went great, and they were like over the moon about it. I did it like 3 or 4 more times after that, and then the 2 other hosts, something fell through and kind of took a hiatus, and then obviously the famous pandemic hit. I remember that my brother had a mic in his closet that he never used, and I was like, honestly, I'm just going to plug it into my laptop, like sit in my garage, like open a beer, and I'm just going to talk.
Just rip it.
And like first time I did it, I was like, all right, that was pretty good. And then the next weekend, the big Sugar Sean fight was happening against, it's escaping me now, but Sugar Sean was fighting, and I called the fight to a T, how he was going to win Eddie Wineland. I called it to a T on how he was going to beat him. And then because it was my first episode, everyone wants to see if you're going to suck in your first episode. So you get your most views in your first one, then you see a drop off. And people were like, holy smokes, you called it to a T. And I was like, well, I mean, I've been watching it for a long time. It is what it is. That was an audio-only show called The Unanimous Decision, and took a little bit of a hiatus from that. And then, you know, originally what got me into content, I'm going to segue it now. I'm going to tie it all in after. What got me into content,
you know the drill.
Pretty much. What got me into content was I'm not interested in Netflix. I'm not interested in TV. I only watch sports, or I'm a YouTube guy. I watch Nelk and Steve Will Do It and Logan Paul and Jake Paul, and then I watch anything and everything. I'm a big YouTube guy. So I wanted to be on YouTube. Yeah. And I'm like, all you got to do is register, put up a little bit of money, have hard work and consistency, and you could end up on there. It's very simple.
Yep.
So I did that. And then basically I was in my car last February on my way home from a client, and Kyle from the Nelk Boys put out, hey, we're going to be putting out a full send MMA media correspondent contest. Drop your stories why you should do it. I was literally driving in my car, posted like a little thing on why they should choose me, and it blew up. Like, people on Twitter were like, yo, this is like the Bob Menery of MMA that we needed. Like, Menery's so dumb. Guy doesn't know what he's saying. Like, we got to get this guy in here, and whatever the case may be. And people started kind of liking and retweeting and whatever. And then what happened is I posted a clip of me and professional boxer Shaquille Finn from Brossard. Great guy. And we did a great podcast together. And I posted the clip on Twitter. And Kyle retweets it being like, this guy fucks, with the video of me. And I'm like, what? Like, this is insane. So then I started getting like a lot of whatever. People were rooting for me and shit like that. And then basically they threw me in a contest. I had a total of like 400 followers. Everyone
on
else
Twitter.
on Twitter. No, everything. All platforms, 800 followers on all platforms, 800 total.
Okay.
I finished 6th place in the voting. Everybody else from 1 to 5 had like 100K and over. Anyways, I don't win the contest. I'm working out in my basement. And the next thing you know, my garage, I get a DM from Kyle. And he just says, yo.
The Nelk boy, Kyle.
Yeah, it's right here. I'll show it up. Yeah, I'll show it to you after. I'll show it to you after. So I said, yo. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, yo, what's up? He's like, what's your number? So I give him my number. I don't hear from him. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm completely crushed. I'm sitting on my couch in July. OG Shawnee Mack, who got chosen for the Full Send MMA media job, asked the question. I'm like, what? I didn't even get a shot. Like, this is crazy. They didn't even call me. They chose him. Okay, fine. Later that night, I get another text from Kyle. Yo, what up? I'm like, what?
I don't know, man. I just gave you my number. Like,
and I'm like,
ghosted me.
Thank you. You said it, not me. And then I said, I was like, my guy, what's up? He's like, what's your number? I'm like, all right, we'll do it again. Send him my number. Haven't heard from him again. And the show goes on, baby. AC Radio's here. Show's climbing. People are driving with it. People are liking it. So regardless, whatever happens, happens. But you could probably see why that kind of enticed me to get into YouTube on a weekly basis, when pretty much my favorite YouTuber hit me up twice. And, you know, to quote someone very close to me, kind of blue-balled me a bit.
No, he's those guys work really hard.
They're the best.
Yeah, they work really hard. Them. It's I'm a little bit upset that Steve Will Do It. They can't even be associated with him. They can't mention him. They can't do anything on YouTube.
He's done so.
Yeah,
with the YouTube game.
Yeah, he's on Rumble. Rumble's not. I've seen Rumble. It's not the same. It's not even close to what YouTube is.
I just find even the layout of the platform.
Yeah,
it's not as intriguing. It's not as accessible.
No.
And you know,
let's not forget either. I mean, YouTube's been at this for 15 years trying to build this up, and you got the Google machine behind it. I mean, it's not going to take Rumble's how old? 3 years?
Maybe, but you said 15 years. I mean, even longer for YouTube. Like,
I want to say 2000. I think 2000. Joey, can you check that? YouTube was created 2005, I think. Yeah, 2005. I want to say Google bought it.
Like, think about like Harley Morenstein. Like, he was popular on YouTube like almost a decade ago.
2005, YouTube was created. And can you ask what year did Google purchase YouTube? I'm gonna guess 2008.
2008.
I'm gonna say yeah. Kind of curious. 2006. Wow. Okay, so a year later, and they purchased it for what? 1.65 1.65 billion. Company, year and a half old, and got purchased for 1.65 billion.
Not bad, man.
That's nice.
KBD's up next for that purchase, baby. Get your checkbooks out.
Yeah. Google, okay, so it's kbdinsurance.com. Check out our website. If you want to buy us for $1 billion, hit me up. I'll sign the dotted line, no problem.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Where were we talking about? YouTube. But the thing about YouTube, there's obviously a lot of eyes on YouTube. And I think one of the things, because you just mentioned it earlier, you're obviously passionate about what it is that you do. And you mentioned it takes a lot of consistency to basically make it on YouTube. That's one of the things that I'm discovering. And because a lot of people start things, a lot of people start podcasts, they start these channels and stuff like that. It's a lot of work, man.
It is.
It's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I really enjoy it, but it's a solid, because I got to contact the guests. I have to come up with good ideas, good topics to talk about. One of the things I'm trying to do now is contact guests that are a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera. And it's not any of the past guests. Most of them, they've all been fantastic. It's just, if you're not used to talking in front of a camera or talking in a setting like this, people, they get nervous, they stutter a lot, all that kind of stuff. But do you find it hard to kind of keep producing every single week? Or how often do you post right now?
So I'll post one podcast a week, and then I aim to do like 3 to 5 Instagram reels a week. And then in between that, networking with people, trying to do IG lives, or at least staying in front of people through the DMs and whatever, and just strengthening those ties. It's definitely a full-time job. It's frustrating because sometimes your least favorite content is the one that booms.
Yep.
And then sometimes your favorite stuff, people just don't see it. They don't get it. You know what I mean? And, I just think that consistency is the biggest thing in this game, because it's so easy to start. Anybody could get on YouTube, but not everybody could stay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not everybody could stay. There are a lot of people that start and then just fall off. They can't have that consistency. Some folks miss 2 weeks, then their viewership goes down, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm dust. This is a wrap." You got to keep going and keep trucking. And the problem is with the podcast game too, is that it's we're always exposed to watching a guy like Logan or Jake Paul, who have 50 people following them around everywhere. They have 70 people in the back. Look how great this impulsive episode is. They're watching them bebitzing and talking and whatever. And then it's you put out an episode and your closest homie's like, "Yeah, I watched it for 2 minutes." And you're like, all right. Content is a very precious and a very delicate thing, because you're exposing yourself and you're putting yourself out there to be vulnerable. So it's just one of those things that you could succeed at it, but you could get eaten alive and spit out in 5 seconds.
And
you
the
could
comments too and everything like that.
Forget about even the haters. Before you even get any comments or likes, it's like a bench press, man. You could work up to those 2 plates. You miss 3 weeks, and by the time you get back to that bar, man, you're like, I don't want to fucking bench press. You know what I mean?
It's a good analogy.
YouTube and content creating, they always call these guys nerds and this and that. It's the dedication and the hard work is really good. But for me, the only thing that gets tough is, some fights are more exciting than others.
Of course.
So when there's a stretch of not so much exciting fights, it's a little bit tougher, you know what I mean? But right now, going from Jake Paul to John Jones,
let's get into that. That's the next thing we're going to jump.
You can feel it right now. This
that was my next question.
This is it, Mike Jackson right here.
And there was one thing, and I noticed this, and you actually mentioned it on the episode. We'll put a link in when we post this. Right after, I think it was the first time ever that there was a fight, and because on Sunday night you produced the content, so you basically watched the Tommy Fury Jake Paul fight, and you produced a video right after that.
Yes.
So let's talk about the fight.
Yeah, of course.
What, for those of you that didn't watch it, I watched it. I didn't think it was that exciting. What did you think?
Well, of course it wasn't that exciting. I mean, the reality is that these guys are not at the top tier level of professional boxing. This is a pro-am fight. When fighters are within their first 10 fights in boxing, there's a reason why Jake is saying guys like Canelo and Floyd Mayweather are fighting nobodies in their first 10 to 20 fights, because it's essentially pro-am. It's hey, we got to start getting a little bit of dough, but we have to build the asset and water it and water it and water it. And that goes 2 ways. The Deontay Wilder way. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Deontay Wilder. I mean, the guy was knocking people out left, right, and center. And then you put him in front of a real boxer and, the brand plummets in 5 seconds.
Yeah. Well, it was still the good fight between him and Fury. It was still a great fight. I mean,
for sure.
There's also, it's debatable that Fury was on the canvas for more than 10 seconds. Some people, if you
he
actually
was
count
on the
it,
canvas for more than 10
it was like
seconds.
11, I think.
It was 12 seconds probably.
So,
but on the flip side, when you then go and blame your performance on a 90-pound robotic outfit, and then you go and blame it on your coach for like throwing in the towel or wanting to throw in the towel because he wants to protect you, those are things that like kind of hurt your credibility a little bit.
Yeah, like when he lost the next two fights. I still like Deontay Wilder. I like his demeanor. I think he's going
to fight Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I saw that.
He will. I think he will, because he's the best matchup in professional boxing for Ngannou to fight, because he's not the most technical boxer. Dude, Ngannou versus Fury is not a good fight.
No,
Fury is dancing and jabbing around this
whooped.
guy for 20 rounds straight.
Yeah.
But Wilder is just going to look for the KO, and that's the only style that Ngannou is like really used to.
Yeah. It just basically he loads up his right hand. It's kind of the same thing as what Jake Paul. I kind of let's stick on on Fury and Jake Paul. I keep mixing the two up. Tommy Fury and then Tyson Fury. Tommy Fury is the young guy who just fought Jake Paul.
Yeah.
What do you think? This is what everyone's thinking. I mean, the guy Jake Paul, he's got 25 million subs on YouTube or whatever it is. It's over 20 million. What do you think is next for this guy? Because I think he definitely got a reality check.
Yeah.
I didn't think he looked that good in this fight. I know he said himself that he goes, I think I had a better performance against Anderson Silva.
I agree.
Maybe that's true. He goes, I was flat-footed, and after the interview he goes, I got sick twice, I had an injury, yada yada yada. I don't think he should have said that. Shut up and say I lost.
Sure,
kind of.
Of course.
But that's besides the point. What do you think's next for Jake Paul?
What's next for Jake Paul is most likely the Tommy Fury matchup, because it was in the contract that if Jake lost, he's granted a rematch. So,
but you put in your content there will be no rematch.
Well,
so
absolutely. Well, absolutely.
You want the clicks.
Well, it's not that I want the clicks.
Yeah.
It's that you got to play the game.
Got it.
And the reality is, though, is that, when you listen to the title and then you listen to the content, I do state why I don't think the rematch should happen. And I still actually don't believe that the rematch will happen. But, if we're basing it off of the contract, the fight should happen next. But my theory, what I think is going to happen is that I think the spark of Tommy Fury is going to shy away a little bit. And then I think that renegotiations with the likes of a Nate Diaz will come back together. I think that this is the better matchup and the better realm for Jake Paul to run in, because the reality is that Tommy Fury's a real boxer. Let's call it that. But if it wasn't for the Love Island thing and the Molly May thing and all of these things, there's not really that much interest to Tommy Fury besides being Tyson's brother, but he doesn't like if Jake would have beat Tommy Fury, people would have been like, he's not that great of a boxer. Like, fight another one now. And then it's like the competition gets better, but the notoriety of the opponent that he's fighting gets kind of smaller. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I think that Jake should still stay in the path of fighting like former MMA guys, maybe lower level boxers and whatever, because that is the level that he's at. He didn't use his footwork well. He had no jab. He was sticking out his jab far too much. He didn't cut off the ring well. And then he started to rely on that overhand right when he got too tired.
And Fury saw it coming every time. He just back up.
And the thing is that overhand right will land against Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva because they are MMA fighters. Yeah. The boxing in MMA is not of the same caliber of a boxer. But like I did say on my podcast, Jake Paul still did bring, in fact, the best out of Tommy Fury. He's never had a performance looking that good in his life.
Yeah, interesting. And so do you think, I don't know, I just think that Jake Paul had like a really big reality check. He's great at selling. He's great at being the bad guy. He can get under your skin. He's great at all those. He's a genius marketer. He's a brilliant marketer.
Very good.
I'll give him that. I don't see him. I don't know. He's like, it kind of, even for me, I'm like, hey, he's not that. Tommy Fury's not a good boxer. And Jake Paul, he's not that young. He's 26 years old.
Yep.
I was kind of thinking, okay, if he actually beats Tommy Fury, I think he can actually kind of run with this. I think it just solidified the fact that I would agree with you. I don't think he'll ever be a top tier boxer. I think it's too late. I don't think he has I don't think he has the talent to get to that point. But then again, I don't really know that much about boxing, and you know a lot more about boxing. Like, what do you think? Do you just think Jake Paul's going to fight like a Nate Diaz? Do you ever think he'll actually try and become a real professional boxer, or he'll keep doing this Mickey Mouse stuff?
Well, so I don't consider this necessary. I consider the Nate Robinson fight Mickey Mouse, but Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, I don't consider Mickey Mouse nor Tommy Fury. Listen, the thing is with Jake that people always neglect and don't think about is like Jake is like a startup company right now. And in his first 3 years, he's performing really well.
Yeah, making a lot of money too.
And everyone is looking at this startup like, when's it going to be Google? When's it going to be Apple? When's it going to be NASA? Like, it's like, okay, can we relax here? It's a startup. It's in its third year of growth, and the numbers are looking good, baby. Yeah. So don't worry about it. So that's why I'm kind of like, hold on now, because he has a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources and a lot of dedication to get himself to where he needs to be. But it doesn't happen without you physically putting in the work.
I think he has a very good mental game as well. I think he actually has 100%. A really good head game.
Oh, I guarantee you his mental game makes him a better boxer than he actually is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like if you took the brain out of it and it was just the frame moving, you'd be like, maybe not so much. I don't think he's afraid. He's not. Yeah, I don't think so.
I think if he is, he doesn't show it.
I think the two of them are fearless, him and Logan. But that's my standpoint. Is everyone's like waiting for him to blow, like he's going to fight Canelo or fight Arthur Beterbiev or Dmitry Bivol or something like that. It's not going to happen, you know. But if you look at the progress that he's done in the last few years, like how many people out there could say that they've dedicated themselves to something in for 3 years and have actually seen like a pretty good ROI?
He works hard too.
He works hard. And you know, all I hear is like, well, if I had that much money, I'd be able to do something. I'm like, you have the same 24 hours as everybody else, and you put your pants on the same way as everybody else does. You're not special.
How much did they make in that fight?
Well, I mean, the numbers are always fake. Like whatever you find online.
The reason I'm asking you because I was trying to find the information. I went to 10 different websites. I kept getting different numbers.
I'll tell you the closest that I found is that I think Tommy had 35% of the pay-per-view. Jake had 65%. Okay. I think that Tommy could have topped out at $4.5 million, and I think that Jake, it was like he could have topped out at like 8 or something like that. But what you need to understand is that Jake Paul is going the Mayweather route. This isn't a top-rank event featuring Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. This is a most valuable promotions event presenting Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Who owns Most Valuable Promotions? Jake Paul and Nikisa Badari, the former CFO of the UFC. And that's where you get the bread, baby, is not only when you're the fighter, but when you're also the promoter. And that's why guys like Floyd Mayweather have been able to be so successful, because they're the fighter and the promotion.
What a perfect. This guy knows how to segue stuff. This was the next topics I wanted to talk about. Let's get into fighter pay. Let's get into this. Okay. You know what the hell you're talking about when it comes to this stuff. Can we stay on this? I don't fully understand. For the viewers out there, they probably don't understand as well. Explain the difference between, let's look at boxing, how they make their money, because the fighter pay between the UFC, for the top UFC fighters versus the top boxers, and there's multiple boxing leagues. Mm-hmm. The top tier guys, the top 1% or top 5%, let's call it, in boxing, make more money than the top 5% in the UFC.
For sure.
But if you look at the average pay for all boxers versus the average pay for all UFC fighters, the average pay is actually higher in the UFC.
It's possible.
So the low tier guys, I mean, because you can get some boxing fights. If it's your first 5 fights, I mean, sometimes you'll hear Mayweather, I think his first fight was $5,000 or something, or $2,000. It's not a lot of money at all. Versus you can get kind of like your first fight in the UFC. I think it's like $25,000 or something like that. But
well, hold on now, because when we're using Floyd Mayweather as an example, this is still a former Olympian.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So like going into your pro fight, you're going to already get paid more than like, you know, somebody who's been working up the amateurs, had a 50-50 record, didn't win anything on the state, didn't win the Golden Gloves in New York City, you know, or anything like that. You're probably going to be making like 500 and 500, 200 and 200. It's not as glamorous as you think at 5K in your first fight. No way.
Interesting. Yeah. So, but here, let's just, can you explain to us how the system, I guess we'll call it, works in boxing? How do people get paid? So you got the promotional companies, there's multiple of them. You have the actual boxers, and then they get paid. I don't fully understand it. How do these guys like make their money, generally speaking? I know each fight, because there's always different promotional companies, might have one here, one there. Yeah. Some get more, some get others. But one guy I was watching like this YouTube video, he actually gave a pretty good explanation. He said that, so in the UFC, you're in the UFC, it's the best league, the UFC is the UFC. You can't really go anywhere else. And you're not going to make more money if you go fight in another league, another MMA league. Chances are you won't if you're like a middle range
I get you.
fighter.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a fighter in boxing, let's say, for example, you don't like however the contract's set up, whatever percentages you're going to make off the top from the pay-per-views or viewership and all that kind of stuff. If you don't like one of the promotional companies, the contract, the deal that they're presenting to you, there are other promotional companies you can go to.
Yeah.
So if you're a good fighter, another promotional company might go, hey, you're getting ripped off over there. Come to me. I'll give you double what this guy's paying. Example. Can you just explain kind of like the boxing ecosystem, the financial ecosystem? How does it work?
Okay. So you have, you got Eddie Hearn, who runs Matchroom Boxing. He runs more of the British scene. He has Anthony Joshua. He now has Canelo, who before that had was with Golden Boy at Oscar De La Hoya's camp. You also have Top Rank. You also have PBC. So you have these different types of promoters. Bob Arum, who's with Top Rank. Then you have Al Heyman. Al Heyman is like Floyd's guy. And Al Heyman doesn't really reveal himself. He's like more of a low-key guy, but he's the orchestrator behind the scenes. And yeah, you're absolutely right that different promoters and their companies have different TV deals and exposure and packages. Like, for example, Tyson Fury is signed to Frank Warren at Queensbury. And when he wanted some exposure in the United States, he did a deal with Top Rank also, because Top Rank has their TV deal in the States. So he wanted exposure in the States, so then they did like a co-promotion. So there are then options to co-promote, and that's the biggest thing. I don't know if I answered a little bit there, but you did. So there are different.
How did it work? And this is another interesting. This just popped in my head. How did it work amongst promotional companies for the Mayweather and McGregor fight?
So the reason why it worked is because Dana White wanted the fight to happen. Okay.
Dana White, UFC the promotional company of McGregor? Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Of course. Absolutely. For sure. They co-promoted it. So that was the whole point and the purpose. So you have more options in boxing to go to different promoters. Depending on where you're from and where your fan base is will kind of dictate where it's better off for you to go. Then you have a guy like Canelo that can basically do whatever he wants. He's like, okay, I'll take Eddie Hearn, who's bigger in England, but like I'll make him work for me in the States. No problem. And it's been working seamlessly since the Golden Boy fallout. But, people do say like, oh, you don't have anywhere else to go outside the UFC. Corey Anderson, who was a UFC light heavyweight contender, was supposed to fight John Jones eventually. They were running in the same circles. Went over to Bellator and already made more money in like 2 fights than he had in like 8 fights. So there are careers for guys outside the UFC that will get paid that money in Bellator and in PFL and in also one championship. And then think about this. PFL does this cool thing now where 10 guys are in basically a bracket together, and depending on how they win and how fast they win and if they win in a first round knockout versus decision, they get a points factor. And then at the end of the year, they get invited to the playoffs. Then they can compete for $1 million. So when the UFC dropped the ball on UFC featherweight Shane Burgos and didn't give him the raise that he wanted, he was like, ciao, I'm going to PFL. I'll be one of the best fighters there and be in competition to compete for $1 million every year.
Who finances these guys? So do you know who's the money behind Bellator? Because the UFC at the beginning, it was the
Bellator,
brothers.
I think it's Viacom.
Viacom?
I believe it's Viacom. The people who were funding the UFC before were Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta.
Yes, that's
who own pretty much the majority of
They're out
Las
now.
Vegas.
They sold to a Saudi. I think they sold to a company. Anyways, they're out. I know for a fact that they're out of the UFC.
They are out of the UFC. However, when the UFC needs a real favor done or a real deal done, they call Lorenzo.
Really?
When they need GSP back, when they want Khabib back, when they want McGregor back, when they want like the real cream of the crop, they call Lorenzo. Lorenzo's that dude. Lorenzo is that guy. You know what I mean? Like
Dana White's not that guy?
No, hold on now. You put words in my mouth here now. I'm trying to get a big job eventually here. This guy's trying to cancel me on my first episode here. Unbelievable. No. Dana's that dude. But I said that Lorenzo's that guy. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Because that was one of the things, too, for the financing. Because you obviously, the UFC, I'm so intrigued by this story. And
dude,
just
they
the
were on their
story of-
last payday
Yes.
from Lorenzo Fertitta, and Dana got it done.
Yes, and because of the Ultimate Fighter,
Exactly.
the show, and they out of their, who were the two fighters that fought their
Forrest Griffin versus the late Stephen Bonner, who had recently just passed away, and the UFC held a memorial for him at the UFC Apex, which was really nice.
Well, you could argue that he and Forrest Griffin saved the UFC.
It's very well possible for sure, which is crazy to think because there were some great fights going on then, but people love reality.
Yeah.
They love storylines. They love getting engaged and falling in love with these fighters and their stories, and they like to be able to relate to them.
What do you think is going to happen with these leagues? Because if you look at the UFC, so you got the UFC, creme de la creme. It prints money. They've done everything. They've been through the ringer. They lost money for what, 4 years, 3 years. They lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think they lost. I'm pulling numbers out of my ass. They lost over. I think it was over $100 million that Lorenzo and his brother were not making money. And like you said, went up to Dana White and said, "This doesn't work. We're done. Ciao. This league is done. We got to fold up." So Bellator, the information that I was collecting on the internet, I don't know anything about PFL, but I know right now they are not profitable at all. They're not they're losing a lot of money. Bellator, yes.
Yep.
And so do you think that these leagues can, because eventually the money behind
Bellator's for sale, by the way.
It is, but again, this is speculation. Is it for sale because the business model isn't going to work, or is it? What do you? I'm asking your opinion. What do you think is going to happen to this league? Because the UFC took years to turn a profit.
Totally.
Do you think this is a sustainable league?
It's absolutely a sustainable league. If you look at some of the champions in Bellator right now, like Amasov, who just fought from the Ukraine, Johnny Eblin in the middleweight division, they could compete with the guys in the UFC. And there are fighters on the lower weights that I didn't met. Patchy Mix is fighting Hafion Stotts for the 135-pound or the featherweight title. These guys can compete in the UFC. So Bellator's champions, especially at their top 5 range in every division, very competitive with the UFC. The thing is that I've spoken about it on the show. I'm not a big fan of Scott Coker. He's the head guy. He's the Dana White of Bellator. He's got great relations. He knows how to keep those ties with the legends of the sport, and he knows how to treat fighters well. He has a more calm, nicer approach than Dana White. But unfortunately, I just don't think that is the trait of somebody who gets shit done. When I look at Dana White, I look at a Vince McMahon. And I wanted to tell you that the UFC is more run similar to the WWE than it is boxing. Okay, plain and simple. Vince McMahon is Dana White. He's 1 second your best friend, the next he's your worst enemy. The only difference is one fixes fights and the other one doesn't. But they still control you equally. You know what I'm saying?
What's your opinion on Dana White?
Dana White's a good guy. I mean, you shouldn't slap your wife, though. But you're a good guy, plain and simple.
Yeah, that was in the news a couple of weeks ago.
But he's that guy. I've spoken to Dana before. He's a very nice guy. I've seen him in passing at events. I asked him a question on his thoughts on Mayweather versus Pacquiao when it was happening. And he's always a very, very nice guy with the fans. I think he's a fans-first type of guy. And, maybe in other sports, they're not fans first with load management and all of these things, but you bet your ass Dana White is fans first.
What's your opinion on Ariel Helwani?
Ariel Helwani's that guy. That's my boy right there. You have a Jew on the show. You think I'm not going to support a Jew? Montreal zone. He's a great podcaster.
Is he from Montreal?
Of course. Of course.
I did not know that.
He went to Syracuse University, but he's from Montreal.
I didn't know that.
Of course.
Why does Dana White despise Ariel?
Because at UFC 199, he leaked the big news about the Brock Lesnar fight happening right before the commercial was going to happen. He just wrote, stay tuned. There's going to be a commercial for Brock Lesnar fighting at UFC 200 against Mark Hunt. And Dana was just like, you piece of shit. Why couldn't you wait? And he's like, I'm doing my job.
And that's where the feud started.
That's where the feud started. And he put Ariel in a lot of difficult situations with ESPN and Fox and BT Sport as well. And he's come out on top every single time. BT Sport is a British network. They turned around to him and said, we don't want you working with Ariel on the UFC stuff. They said, no problem. The WWE wants him for the BT Sport stuff. He was at Elimination Chamber with GSP sitting front row. They pulled him out to cut a promo for the WWE. The guy's laughing. And I'm going to be next up right next to him.
Okay, so I want to let's focus on fighter pay.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. So if you look at the stats, in terms of a revenue share, the UFC splits. I'm not offering my opinion. You don't have to give your opinion either, but it is an interesting conversation. It's something that a lot of people like to talk about. So right now, the UFC, they split, from the data that I've collected, 16% of the revenue they collect goes to pay the fighters. If you look at other leagues like the NFL, NHL, baseball, they split 50-50. You could also argue, here's another interesting stat, that since 2005, the fighter pay has increased by 600%. Another pro is basically, if you look at the average UFC fighter versus the average boxer, the average, okay, not the top, the average UFC, they make more money than boxers. There's also, and Dana White always says this himself too, he goes, in my league, in the UFC, if I give you a contract and you're going to get paid X amount, you're going to get fucking paid. You don't have to worry about getting paid. Boxing sometimes with the promotional companies. I mean, Logan Paul versus Mayweather, perfect example. I don't know if it's true. I think it is. Logan Paul is basically like, I still haven't gotten paid by Mayweather. The promotional company still hasn't given me. So my question is just basically.
But that's a Mickey Mouse promotion that Logan should have never did a deal with.
It's still a fight though, and it's still someone that's not getting paid. So I guess like on the pro side, I like Dana White. I think he's done an excellent job. I don't think barely anyone can build up a league like that. I think you have to have grit. I think you have to have balls of steel. You have to tell people to fuck off, and you have a bunch of people that are probably trying to walk all over you. He's a tough guy. I definitely wouldn't want to cross him. But with the UFC, like 16%, when you compare it to other major leagues, it's not a lot of money.
Not at all.
And his answer is always like, go start your own fucking league if you want to pay more. That's usually his answer. So
there's a couple of things here. I mean, number one, what's interesting is some of these guys only fight, or girls only fight 1 to 3 times a year. So they're not really fighting that much. So that means that they have to have a bigger roster, which means that they have to keep more people on their payroll that don't even necessarily deserve to be in the UFC, but they have a deal with ESPN where they have to have a certain amount of fights to put on, which means that they've had to water down their roster. It's just facts. I was talking to Joey before the show, 2006. When you look at the roster in 2006, that is the thickest steak you can find in the restaurant. Like plain and simple. You know, now when you're looking at the roster, it's watered down. They have a quota to meet in terms of how many fights they have to put on. So, you know, you have a bigger roster, you have more employees, you got to share your revenue now with more people. You know what I mean? So that obviously causes a bit of a difficulty. But on the flip side, when you think about the risk versus the reward, it's not high enough. They should be getting paid more, especially at the top. You're valued at 4.3 in your last sale. Billy, like, why aren't you paying the fighters more? I completely agree with that. But like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I think you're the Dana White of this company. It's like, what if everyone marched in and was like, I want like 5% more? Like, I don't know what the answer is to that on the number side. But what I could say is that, you know, Dana's answer saying, well, if you don't like it, go find somewhere else to fight. That line's going to run out quickly. Yeah. And it slowly is, because we have Mike Perry versus Luke Rockhold in bare knuckle fight championship. And then we have Chad Mendes versus Eddie Alvarez. All guys that fought in the UFC, all guys that have then went on to kind of do their own thing afterwards. So there are leagues that are coming up on the rise that I think that
like the slap league.
No. This is BS. But PFL and Bellator, for example, I think that they should fuse together. I think that some of these promotions need to fuse together and you know, strengthen numbers if they want to help kind of combat the UFC. The WWE had WCW around for a long time. Then it kind of went over to TNA and Impact and then like Ring of Honor and whatever it is. And then now they have AEW. But the WWE has always been, you know, the McDonald's of the wrestling. You know, the first fast food place you think of is McDonald's. The UFC will be the same thing, but there still is need for a Burger King and a Wendy's. There's still a need for a PFL and a Bellator. It's important to have that because there are people in the UFC that, you know, the UFC needs the people that are going to open up the show for 12 and 12. You know, but a guy on Bellator who's a co-main eventer, a main eventer, 12 and 12 is not enough money. So he does need to go somewhere else to find a bigger ceiling. And we have seen success stories where folks have gone on to other leagues and done well.
What happened with Francis Ngannou? Because I know that they wanted to sign him again. The number that I was hearing, the UFC offered him $14 million for a fight. Again, I'm pulling numbers out of my ass, and it's very difficult to get confirmed numbers from the UFC because they don't disclose this stuff. long story short, he didn't sign the deal. Do you know what
he
what
wanted to
there?
be a free agent. He wanted to be able to box and fight in the UFC. He also wanted sponsors. Something that you spoke to me
UFC
about.
Won't let you sponsor.
Yeah, something you spoke to me about before the show was like, what's with the sponsorship deal?
Yeah.
You know, the reason why.
Can you just explain to the viewers basically like how sponsorship works in boxing or in MMA?
Yeah, sure.
Like how does what's in it for the fighter?
Listen, a sponsorship is like any other endorsement where, you know, they're probably paying you and giving you the product to promote at the same time, which helps you pay for your training, helps you pay for your nutritionist, pays for your family and your overall well-being and stuff like that. Now, what started to get a little bit weird is I don't know if you're familiar with him, Brendan Schaub.
Yep.
Brendan Schaub, who also fought on The Ultimate Fighter, was getting paid more from his sponsors than he was to fight. So he turned around to Dana and was like, I'm not signing this contract if I'm getting paid more from some like underwear company and like a water bottle company than me going and getting my face broken against Antonio Nogueira in Brazil. You know, so what started to happen is some of these popular guys got more endorsement deals. They get more money. They get more power. How do you reduce the power and the control of the fighters? You reduce the endorsement money. You know what I mean? Like,
because it was.
You think 50 cent without the vitamin water deal? Forget about rap, man. Forget about MMA. Forget about soccer and tennis and this and that. The endorsements is where you make your bread. LeBron is making more money off of shoes than being the highest points player in the NBA. It's all about the endorsements. And when you sync that through and you
say
cut
the same
that
for Tiger
down,
Woods with Nike.
Yes, yeah. Same thing there. Like, you know, and McGregor's one of the few guys that was able to separate from that with the Proper 12 thing.
How much did he make off Proper 12?
I think like 100 or 200 mil, something crazy.
Jeez, that's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
That's one thing with McGregor. I know. So he's back on The Ultimate Fighter. There's a couple clips I've seen surface on TikTok. Kind of watched him. He's got his suit and everything.
Yep, like the last one.
Do you think? I know he's going to bring in viewers. My opinion is if he loses the next fight, which I think he will, he'll never come back again.
So how does Michael Chandler beat Conor McGregor?
No, that wasn't my question. My question is more.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is I don't see how Conor would be in the right frame of mind to have that grit, to have that determination, to have that. When he was coming up, he just wanted to be the champ. He had that drive to do something. He's already accomplished all of it. And I just think he has the money. He's partying all the time. There's speculation he's on PEDs. There's all these things. I don't think he cares as much as the next guy. It's kind of like a Habib Nurmagomedov. These guys eat, sleep, and live fighting. You're not going to beat that guy. You're just not. All he does is like wakes up, prays, trains, eats, train, repeat. That's all they do. So What do you think? Do you think what do you think his frame of mind is right now in Conor? Or is he just doing this to be more of a showman again? And by the way, I'm going to watch it. I love watching Conor. I think he's great.
Yeah.
He's very entertaining. I just don't think his mind. I don't think he cares anymore.
So I think Conor does absolutely care. I just think that the level of work that he's perhaps willing to put in versus he was in the past is at a bit of a different level. But to me, it's not so much the work ethic. To me, the biggest red flag that I've seen in McGregor as of lately have been the people that he's surrounded by. You know, John Kavanaugh's a good coach, great coach. Don't get me wrong. But I feel that his relationship with Conor as the head coach has ran its course. And then I go and I look and I see some of the pad work that McGregor's been doing lately. And for a guy who was supposed to have the best boxing in the UFC, the boxing doesn't really look that great. I think what's starting to happen is that there's a little bit too many yes men in the room. And it has also changed Conor's style up in itself. When he was training for Khabib Nurmagomedov, he would call a Russian guy, or what? I'm serious. He would literally call a Russian guy, say, you're going to be downstairs in 45 minutes to spar, and Conor's going to be there. And Conor would go, fight the guy, beat him up for however many rounds as he needed to, and then he'd go on a bender for a week. He would treat these sparring sessions like fights. And the only way that you're going to let that happen around you is by having a poor structure and team around you that kind of lets you become bigger than your actual self that got you to the dance. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think. No one will ever beat, Khabib Nurmagomedov beat Conor McGregor. Nate Diaz beat Conor McGregor. Floyd Mayweather beat Conor McGregor. But like realistically, like The only person that is going to give Conor McGregor the biggest defeat of his life, I believe, is himself and Dustin Poirier. But and you know what I'm saying. But Poirier against Poirier in the third fight, he was looking great before the leg kicks.
Yeah,
people were like, "Oh, McGregor didn't look that good." Blah blah blah. I thought that he looked great, but I think that similar to a Jake Paul, we need to learn to change our expectations about fighters. Like, I don't understand when people like stopped realizing that what these people are saying is promotion. Like, when did we start thinking that everything Jake Paul says is like word for word, verbatim, and true?
I agree.
It's not the case. We have to start taking these things with a grain of salt, having more of critical thinking, removing yourself from the situation. Why is Jake Paul doing this? To generate more money.
Yes.
Why is Conor McGregor saying this? To generate more money. You know what I'm saying?
And he could actually, like Jake Paul, if you look at it, he's trying to get under your skin, and you're letting him get under your skin. That's what he's trying to do.
Yes.
It's like what Eminem used to say back in the day, back in the early 2000s or late 90s. All the conservatives in the U.S., they're losing their mind, and the rap music, and all the homosexuality, all the stuff, And he even said, he went on air and they were interviewing him. He goes, "Don't you get it? I'm trying to get under your skin, and you're letting me get under your skin."
Yes.
He goes, like, "I'm trying to do this, so I'm winning."
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And Jake Paul's winning. He's taking money to the bank.
Yep.
Because love him or hate him, you're going to watch the fight.
Yes.
And he knows this.
Yes.
Because for as many people that want him to win for all the hard work he's done, there's just as many people that want him to lose because they hate his guts. But they're going to watch it either way.
Exactly. Because he's helped build a storyline of a character that people kind of get behind. And that's why you have people in the office talking about the fight. You're looking at them like, have you ever seen a fight in your life? Like, how do you even know about this one? Of all fights, you know this one? Like, oh, come on. It's got to get better than this.
The last fight I watched the Tommy Fury and versus Jake Paul the weekend that just passed. The last fight I watched before that was when I was down in Florida in Tampa Bay, Dustin Poirier against Conor McGregor when McGregor broke his leg. That's 3 years ago now, 2 years ago.
Okay, so you were at a restaurant or a bar.
I was at some sports bar watching the game. And but just to say, I like watching the sports highlights. I like kind of following and stuff like that, but it's very rare I'm going to go and watch a whole entire fight. Kind of the same thing with even hockey, unless we're in the playoffs.
Right.
I'll watch a couple games here and there. Yeah. I'm not going to sit there and tune in for a whole entire game.
The problem with just tuning into the highlights of the fights and seeing the finishes and stuff, it's like just skipping to the end of a story, and acting like you know the entire book just because you read the last 5 pages. You know what I'm saying? So, like, my advice to people who actually want to get into the game is, you have to watch the fights, but most importantly, you got to watch the UFC prime times. You got to watch the build-up videos to the fights, the previews, the recaps. That's how you start to get to know the fighters.
Great promotion.
And that has nothing to do with my podcast. What it has to do.
No. I'm not saying for that. I said what I meant by that is the UFC does a really good job promoting their fights.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They do a really great
That's
job
what I meant.
of it. They do a great job of it, and so do I. But
easy there, Adam.
I'm getting tied up here. But yeah, it's just it's an exciting time right now though for fighting, and we've spoken about Jake Paul and Conor McGregor and stuff like that. But who are some of the fighters that are a little less mainstream for you that you like to maybe follow?
I like watching, so I have DAZN, so there's a couple of, they have some good boxers on there. It's not so much, they don't cover UFC. I would have to say Ryan Garcia, the little young guy. I'm sorry? Yeah.
You like that guy?
I like Ryan Garcia. You don't like Ryan Garcia?
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, I would have to say Ryan Garcia. I like following him. I love following Jake Paul. I like following Anthony Joshua.
Why do you like Ryan Garcia?
He's entertaining. He's
in your face every single day.
Yeah.
Impressing you with his speed and his left hook, and he's a good-looking kid too, and he's natural in front of the camera,
very
and
marketable.
All of these great things. He's very marketable, a self-promoter in itself, and for that reason is all the reasons why I like Ryan Garcia. But when we're talking about Gervonta Davis, Tank.
Who's that? I don't know who that
Tank Davis is who Ryan Garcia is supposed to fight next.
Okay.
This is the big fight. Gervonta Davis
When are they fighting?
They're supposed to fight in April if it happens. Okay. Davis is one of Mayweather's guys. They kind of have a little bit of a weird relationship, but as far as I know, they're affiliated. And, you know, Gervonta Davis is one of those hard punchers from the southpaw position that I think is going to give Ryan Garcia difficulty. And I just don't think that Garcia has been prepared enough or is ready for a champion like Tank Davis.
Interesting. I guess time will tell. I mean, he's got talent. He's fast. I watched the fight. He fought that the British guy who was a couple of years older. I want to say a year ago. I watched it on DAZN.
Yeah, and he got dropped.
Yep. He ended up winning the fight though.
Yep.
Came back, which I didn't think. I saw the look on his face after he got dropped. I'm like, ooh, okay, let's see what this kid's made of.
Yep.
Came back, so you got to tip your hat off from there.
Got to love resiliency in the fight game.
Yeah,
you need it.
Yes, of course, because there are definitely some fighters who get popped and they're done. They're done for the fight.
And just for the record, like, just because I'm not hot on a fighter doesn't mean I don't want to see them flourish. I think it's one of those things that, you know, everybody has their own reasons why they get behind fighters or whatever the case may be. I try to stay as unbiased as possible, but, you know, at the same time, I'm more of a podcaster. I'm not a journalist. So, you know, I run to my own beat. But everybody's got a fighter that they're going to get behind for some reason or no reason at all. And I think the beauty of that in itself is that there's something for everybody in the fight game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, MMA. I mean, MMA came out of nowhere. I mean, it used to be just boxing. MMA is, I think it's bigger. Well, I definitely follow UFC more than I do boxing now. I have a quick question though, because you just said something, and this was another topic I wanted to cover just quickly. If it happens, so you always hear these Boxer A and Boxer B, especially the big names. If it happens, if it happens, if it happens, and the UFC, Dana White or however it works, they get the good matchups. They always get the good matchups done. They get shit done.
Love this.
And why the hell can boxing? They can never get their fucking shit together to have these big mega fights. And I'm always thinking to myself, why the hell aren't they making this fight? This would be such a moneymaker. Both sides would make a lot of money.
Great question.
Let's see who the actual best fighter in the world is. How come? What the hell goes on in the boxing world?
Well, that's why the UFC is what the UFC is because they put on the best fights because the best fighters are signed to them and they are under contract to have to, you know, fulfill that duty to fight. And in boxing, because promoters will have to work with other promoters, you know, if you're signed to Matchroom Boxing under Eddie Hearn and the cash cow in the States is under Bob Arum and Bob and Eddie don't have a great relationship, things are going to be a little bit difficult. You know, let's go to the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather thing. Floyd turned around and said, I want Olympic testing. You're going to have to draw blood through a needle, whatever the case may be. Manny was like, I don't like needles. I don't want to do it. So that freezes up the fight. You know, small things like that. Then at the fact that, like, if you ever notice, Floyd Mayweather only announces a fight at 6 weeks prior to the fight happening, whereas for other fighters, it's weeks in advance. Why? Because Floyd, you know, wants to leave you thinking, is the fight going to happen or not? Because, like, I'm training here, but I haven't signed the contract yet. Is the fight going to happen? And then all of a sudden, Floyd sends the contract in, and then you're like, oh, fuck, like, I got to get ready. I got 6 weeks. Like, I've been training, but, like, now I know it's actually happening. Really it flips a different gear, you know? So why don't fights happen in boxing? Because there's too many fingers in the pie. You got two promoters to deal with. Then you have two fighters. Then you have the different sanctioning bodies as well, you know, that the IBF, WBA, WBC, and the IBF, WBA, WBC. There should be one more.
Yeah, there's four.
IBF, WBA, WBC.
Joey, this is going to drive us nuts.
And the WBO, obviously. So they have those four, and they all have different sanctioning bodies, and then they have different champions in that category.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the lineal undisputed champion, you own all belts, okay? But if you only have the WBA and the WBC title, then there could be 1 to 2 other fighters that have those belts.
Because that was the case a couple of years ago with Anthony Joshua. He had 2 belts. I know he just lost to Usyk. What's his name? Usyk?
Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, Usyk. So he just lost to him.
The best.
But before that, so correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony Joshua, he had 2 belts, and then Tyson Fury had the other 2 belts, I think, right?
Fury had the WBC.
Okay. But I guess it just circles back to this is why, in my opinion, the UFC is just a superior league and why they're growing quicker because they get shit done. They get the matchups that the crowd that the viewers want to see.
Yes.
They always get that done.
And the sanctioning bodies in boxing get in the way of things. When Tyson Fury beat Vladimir Klitschko for the undisputed title, because Tyson didn't want to defend his IBF title against the mandatory challenger for that title, he was stripped of it. So you have mandatories within these 4 titles now.
Too many rules.
Yeah, there's way too many
rules.
things. I said, there's way too many fingers in the pie. If you're the undisputed champion, each one of these belts think that they're the most important belt of them all.
It's like 4 leagues, I guess, kind of ish, you could say. When was the last time there was a boxer, a heavyweight, that held all 4?
Well, Tyson Fury. Yeah,
Tyson Fury had all 4?
Yeah, and then Vladimir well, he had all 5, because once you hold all 4, then you have the ring title, which is the 5th one. So yeah, I mean, you have Tyson Fury, then you have Vladimir Klitschko, and Klitschko held it for like a really long time. And then I think before that you had Klitschko's brother Vitaly.
Yeah, I remember. I wasn't watching it live, but I watched the highlights. Anthony Joshua against Klitschko.
Great fight.
The uppercut. Oh my God.
Great fight.
And because it was at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
And just like watching the whole crowd erupt. Oh my God. For those of you out there, go on YouTube, type in Klitschko versus Anthony Joshua. Go to the 11th round, I want to say, 10th round. It's towards the end of the fight.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua knocks him out. The crowd, it's 80,000 people in the stadium, I think, at Wembley. In Britain, Anthony Joshua is British. The crowd goes absolutely insane. Such a cool clip.
Very cool clip, but in the beginning of the fight, Joshua gets dropped.
Yes.
And I think that is the most interesting part of the fight to me, because that was the beginning of starting to see the holes in Joshua's game. Seeing that he is hittable, seeing that he doesn't absorb his punches that well, but he did show us that he's very resilient and he knows how to come back well. But then you saw later in his career that, that hittableness, and not really that capable of maybe taking sometimes the biggest, hardest punches, it caught up with him.
Well, it's like with Alexander Usyk. I mean, he beat Anthony Joshua twice. It was clear that he won. And I think I felt bad for him. The guy's worked so hard.
Yeah, he lost his cool.
He lost his cool, but I mean, I'd be disappointed too. And you also have to imagine the shot to your ego. Just go, hey, this guy's a better boxer than me.
Yeah.
For something you've worked out your whole entire life.
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a better boxer.
He
doesn't punch harder. He's a better boxer.
I think anyone would. It was kind of this. I listened to a lot of like NBA, Shaq and Charles Barkley. They're hilarious together. But they're interviewing Charles Barkley. And at one point he said, so this is when they were facing Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And so, if you're a professional athlete, you got to go in there thinking you're the best. And at one point in the series or in the finals for the NBA championship, came back. He's like, I had 48 points. Michael had 55. He went back home and his daughter was all upset because he guaranteed his daughter that they're going to win the game. And he had to face the reality. He goes, I can't believe I'm saying this. He goes, I think he's a better basketball player than I am. And just this was before the series is over. As soon as you think that you lost, you already lost.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are people that are better at than you are. And it's just, I can totally understand why Anthony Joshua was as upset as he was after the second loss to Alexander. You've been doing this your whole entire life. It's a big shot to your ego going, man.
Actually came into the game quite late.
Yeah. Was he like 21 when he started?
Yeah, he was quite late actually, but I know what you mean, because in basketball, you have 6 other games to figure it out.
Yeah.
But in fighting, if you lose the first 2,
Ciao.
you ain't getting that call again unless the division is very slim.
Yeah, you're not. So the top heavyweights right now, you got Alexander, Fury's retired. Is Deontay Wilder still considered? Well, he lost twice.
Fury's going to come back. You got Alexander Usyk, you got Tommy Fury, you have Deontay Wilder, you have
Tyson
Anthony
Fury.
Joshua.
Tyson Fury.
Yeah, Tyson Fury. Yeah. I said Tommy.
Tommy, yeah.
Sad. You have Deontay Wilder. I mean, Ruiz is still in the picture. I believe he's scheduled to fight Deontay Wilder. Then you have a couple of other European heavyweights as well. Michael Hunter. I wouldn't say it's like the most exciting time right now in heavyweight history unless those top few fights happen.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit now. We're going to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. So you're trying to grow a YouTube channel, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I love picking the brains of people, and for all you out there, sometimes we try and put a little bit of a business spin. I remember once, this was 3-4 years ago, I went to a Gary Vaynerchuk conference in Florida. And
No way.
Yeah, dude, it was super fun. and he was always there. I mean, he produces a lot of content. He still has a massive, pretty big empire, VaynerMedia. He has his own marketing agency and stuff like that. And he would just go there. He goes, start producing fucking content. Just produce content. It's good for your business. And he would always say, I know 99% of you aren't going to do it here, but there's going to be 1% of you who goes, that's why I come to these conferences. If I can get 1% of you guys to actually start producing the content, put yourself out there. You mentioned this earlier, be vulnerable. Because it's embarrassing sometimes. So it's like, I know myself sometimes when I post the content, I know it's good for the business. That's why I do it. I don't particularly enjoy posting stuff on LinkedIn, on TikTok, because I just don't. I get embarrassed, or I don't know. It's not rational, but
it's not the exciting part of the process. The posting part is.
I'm afraid of what other people are going to think.
But you're not afraid of what people are going to think.
No, I am. I am, for sure I am.
I wouldn't have posted.
No, my fear, I care more about growing the business. And so I get over my fear quite easily. And I think a lot of people, I guess the point I'm just trying to get to, there's a lot of people that are listening to this, and it's like, they're like, yeah, I'm going to produce content one day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Just do it.
Yes.
And because I do have a fear. It's not like a big crippling fear, and I can't leave my room. But like there's a certain part, maybe I'm going to be embarrassed. Maybe I'm going to say something stupid. Maybe I'm going to come across as not credible. There's all these thoughts that go through my head because you're putting yourself out there. So like what do you do to overcome that? Or you never think like that anyways?
No, I absolutely, we all have that fear that we're going to post something and get absolutely roasted or lose a bunch of followers or whatever the case may be, or lose ourselves or our credibility. That's for sure. But, rule number one is you got to be talking about things that you're confident in and you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple, you got to stay in the lanes of the things that you're passionate about as well. If you're not staying in the lanes that you're passionate about, then it's not really going to work out. When I first started off AC Radio, it was not only MMA and boxing, it was also fitness and motivation, where I would serve it to you MMA, boxing, then I'd give you like a how to calculate your calories or how to calculate your protein intake, and then I would top that off with a motivation segment to stream it in. And then after a while, I just didn't want to motivate people.
Yeah.
I do it all day for a living. I don't want to get on the podcast and now become preachy. One second I'm an analyst and the next I'm the preacher. Man, it's like too many hats here.
Yeah.
I just took one off.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better viewership. Why? Because I'm passionate about the things that I'm speaking about.
And you're doubling down on what it is that you're good at. I mean, your stuff when it comes to the fight game. You know a lot.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, but it's all about staying in your lane and in what makes you what makes you want to be the most consistent. Like that's what makes Rogan so good. Is 1 second he's got Sam Harris, then he's got his buddy Bert Kreischer, and then he's got someone in the UFC. There's a lot of dynamics there. So how does he stay, so up to date? Maybe there's a lot more behind the scenes than meets the eye. I'm not sure, but most of the time it comes with preparation. But most importantly, like everyone has fears, but we're not actually as scared as we think we are because we're producing. You know what I mean? Paralysis by analysis, I think, is the number one thing that kills people in today's day, because there's too much data and there's too much accessibility to information. If you only had 2 diets to know about, you'd only pick one or the other, and that is that. But the more options you give people, the more lost in the sauce that they are, and they're just running around in this rat race, not actually being definitive and precise about the things and the lanes that they want to incorporate themselves in. Like even political views. It's like you're either this or you're that. It's like, oh well, you shouldn't be like that, and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, so let's build a little bit of a streamline here. One's black, one's white. Let's build some gray. No, you can't do that. You see, you're not as malleable as you think you are. You're not willing to bring yourself to those places as much as you think you are. You think you're there for growth, but you're not. You're just there to be in the pool with the rest of us. But it's not enough to just be in the pool. You got to be swimming. Michael Phelps, baby.
What's your end game with this?
My end game is
with AC Radio.
My end game is I want people to start their day with me. I want people to end their day with me. I want to be a part of people's days, whether they're at work, driving in their car, scratching their ass on YouTube, or having breakfast on a Sunday morning. I want to be a part of people's days, at least a couple of times a week. I go on there, I speak for 14 or 15 minutes, but I'd love to go on there like a Helwani and spit it for 2 to 3, 4 hours, 1 to 3 times a week or something like that. And, the end goal is bringing my professional outlook with a little bit more of that refined breakdown and analysis that isn't so TSN and ESPN, but isn't quite Barstool either. Somewhere right in the middle that doesn't make you feel like you're a degenerate frat boy, and also doesn't make you feel like you're reading a teleprompter, because I go Lil Wayne in my episodes. No notes, no cuts, no edits. If I burp out of the camera. I get right back to it. The show is raw, real, and uncut, and all it is pure facts.
And how do you make money on it? Like, I know it takes time. You got to get the viewers. You got to do everything like that. And sometimes, like, people don't realize this. Obviously, we don't have a big podcast here. I'm trying to get it bigger. I make $0 off of this.
Neither do
Zero.
I don't make any money either. But, first of all, I do believe that in order to monetize, you got to kind of censor the swearing a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing, too, is calculating all of your data, from Instagram and different streams of social media, and then YouTube, calculating all of that data.
So the big platforms, the main platforms are on. You have YouTube, Instagram. What else?
For me personally,
I would say radio.
Yeah, YouTube and Instagram are my top two.
Those are the ones you focus on the most.
Yeah, and then I'm also on Twitter as well. Not really so much under AC Radio. It's at Adam Caplan, but people who know me on it know it's more or less the same. Like, it's in my bio. But, getting all your stats and your data and stuff like that.
And what data do you focus on, though? Because this is something that I'm looking at now. I'm just you've been doing it a little longer than I've been doing it for.
So I believe that at the novice level, the first thing you're looking at is viewership, likes, and engagement and views. That's what I would say. But where you then get to the advanced shit is watch time retention.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody could click your video for 5 seconds and then be like, next. You know what I'm saying? And that could happen 100 times in a day, thousands of times, millions of times in a day. But the watch time retention is usually the number one thing that I think matters the most, because that means that's the longest you've wanted to hear me talk. You know what I mean? Like, take your 5 closest friends. The guy who lets you talk the longest might be low key the guy you're closest with. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I think is very important, is watch time retention. That's a huge thing. And then obviously consistency, not yo-yoing in your videos. You have 500 views, 500 views, 500 views. Then you have your good friend Alex Killorn on, and now you're at 20K. And then you're back to 500, 500. That consistency is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, those numbers are great for now. Don't get me wrong. And then 20K is fantastic. But you don't want to start yo-yoing. You want to build that shit up like a ladder. And obviously you're going to yo-yo a little bit, but you don't want to go up and down too much. But how you monetize, I guess you got to get a little bit more of your statistics better as well. Start firing out some cold call emails for people to want to sponsor the show. If Joey costs X for the hour, this is your overhead for the hour. This is maybe something that you want to try to at least begin for it. Not only maybe not to pay you, but to cost you nothing. You know what I mean? The best thing a drug dealer was ever able to do was to smoke for free.
It's interesting you say that, because like the consistency part, and I think I mentioned this last podcast or a couple of podcasts ago as well. Mr. Beast, basically, everyone knows Mr. Beast on YouTube. He's got 150 or it's over 100 million subscribers.
In every language.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. This guy's he's
ahead of every step of the way.
It's crazy. I didn't know this. He's like 24 or 25 years old. He
could easily start a YouTube university on how to make it and blah, blah, blah. I would throw my money right at him. I'd throw it in his face.
Everybody would. But he was saying the same thing. Basically, if you're starting up, don't even look at anything until you have 100 videos. Get 100 videos, then come talk to me. Because he said, number one, you're probably not going to last for 100 videos. Because 95% of you are never going to get there anyways, because you're just going to give up. You're not going to get any viewership. Come talk to me after 100 videos. And even you could say the same thing about Logan Paul. Logan Paul, if you actually look back at when he got popular in Vine, but before Vine, he was on YouTube. He goes, dude, I had like 4,000 subscribers for like 5 years before I popped off. And then Vine helped me pop off. Then basically I was doing the vlogs and all that kind of stuff. Now he has the Impulsive podcast. Him and his brother are, genius marketers. Boom. But he said that. He goes, dude, I was making videos, like 3-4 videos every single week. And for years, I only had 4,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you. And the other reality is too, even if you keep at it for all these years, you're probably never going to make it either. That's just the reality of it. So people need to get the right motivation. For example, why am I doing this? I'm not going to lie. I'm doing this to basically help benefit my company, KBD Insurance. That's the main reason why I'm doing this. I also happen to enjoy having these conversations. I have a pretty open mind about a lot of things. I like fighting. I like politics. I don't talk about politics because it's a business podcast. Well, it's just not good for business. Talk about, obviously I talk about business, but there's all these types of things that I enjoy talking about. It's just cool. You get to learn about different things. And
100%. And you work a different muscle that carries you over into other parts of your day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to have pretty important phone calls every single day.
Yeah.
Some of them could be a little bit delicate. You have to make some pretty, firm decisions.
Yeah.
Just being, open and being, with the public and being vulnerable kind of makes you a little less scared about the things that kind of happen in the day-to-day things also, you know what I mean? So I think it's a great thing regardless. I encourage everybody to try it at least.
Yeah, I want people to try that. And it's like sometimes I will hear through the grapevine, this person, they kind of said something about you. They're making fun, more or less, they're making fun of me for what I'm trying to do. But you know what? Grant Cardone said it perfectly. He said, I used to always hate on the people who are producing all the content. And then he realized all the potential that it had for marketing. And he came up with the term, if you hate it that much, you should probably be doing it yourself. Because you're just thinking about it. It's like in the back of your mind, you should be doing that because it's most likely going to benefit your business, your life, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. If you put yourself out there and you're genuine and you're not spewing bullshit to just, make it seem like you're this really good person or something like that. If you have real conversations, I feel like over time, it'll just benefit whatever you're trying to achieve.
It's a dangerous trait. It's a dangerous trait, hating or being upset with somebody who you see is on their grind and their hustle and is producing. Because it probably states that like you're at a stagnant point in your life or you're not producing. And, my favorite picture is that photo of Michael Phelps swimming in the pool and the Australian swimmer is looking at his lane.
Yeah.
And Phelps is looking straight ahead.
Yep.
You're so busy watching me that you're not even focusing on your own race. You know what I mean? This was supposed to be your Olympics. This was supposed to be your time to win the gold. And all you're doing is watching the back of my latex head with an American flag on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's a dangerous trait, because you could get so lost in that negativity that even in the moment of the Olympics, you're stuck looking at Michael Phelps instead of in your own lane. So it's such a dangerous thing. But, the haters, the people, trying to build this, what's he doing? He's trying to be the next Joe Rogan or this, that, or whatever. Everyone's got something to say.
Yep.
But everybody wants to swim, but nobody wants to get wet. And that's just not part of the game.
Don't you find too, since you started this, at least this happens for me, and I think it comes from a good place, like they're trying to friends, and they're trying to help. Hey, you should do this. Oh, you should try this. Oh, what about this? It's like, shut the fuck up, man. Go make your own videos. It's like, I don't care. Do you know how many times people come up to me? Oh, you should, unless it's Joey right here or Shamar who helps with the content. I don't fucking care about your opinion. Like, I don't want to stop telling me these things.
The only people who have ever told me to do something with my podcast are people that have never watched an episode.
Yeah.
So to quote one of the great shows, The Dragon Den, for that reason, I'm out.
Yeah.
I will accept feedback. I have no problem with feedback whatsoever. I have a couple of people that I refer to and lean on for feedback in terms of the content, and I encourage them to be as hard on me as possible when they do listen to my stuff. But you always have to know your audience and who you're talking to. And it's like people feel comfortable to give you advice because it's like they're your boy or your son or your family. It's like, oh, it's
again, I just want to make it clear, like it's not malicious. It's coming from a good place, but it's just in my head. It pops in. And I go, dude, I don't really care what you think.
No, but it's like everyone's got a suggestion.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
And then it's like, well, I have suggestions for you that you probably don't want to listen to. And then it's like, so,
exactly.
We're all right here.
Yeah.
Like we're all set here in terms of that. So nothing wrong with feedback, but it's all about always relying on the right people that are in those lanes that do indeed know what they're talking about. And we're on here trying to build a bridge to the audience in terms of like what we're talking about and how they could gauge from it. But then there are conversations that we're the third person or the fly on the wall on, listening in on a podcast, trying to gain even more knowledge. So there's levels to it either way.
I don't really have any more to talk about. Anything you want to bring up before? How long have we been going at this for, Joey? Hour? An hour 25. Jesus, man, time flies when you're having fun, baby.
Listen, man, I could go all day, so it's really up to you. But first thing I wanted to say is it's a pleasure to be on the show. I think you take the show very seriously. I love the setup here.
Thank
Joey's
you.
a good dude too.
Yeah.
You got the production going, all the great equipment. You know, I had a great time, and I have no doubt in my mind that, like, if you continue with it and whatever it is, you're gonna have more people in Montreal that will absolutely want to be on the show. I've seen some of the guests already. You know, good-looking dudes that know how to work hard.
I'm trying to get some women on, to be honest. I hit up a few
course.
girls to get different. One of them, I was speaking to one of them. She's like, I'm busy right now, maybe next month. But I'd like to get some female perspectives as well, you know?
100%. I think that is a very important thing, especially in the business world.
Yeah.
I think that people want to maybe understand some of those other, socioeconomic things that come with business.
You also open up a whole other audience.
You will open up a whole other audience. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But, okay, so we got Adam Caplan of AC Radio. What's AC Fight Radio or just AC Radio?
No, it's just AC Radio.
AC Radio.
On Instagram, it's AC Radio MMA, but the reason why it's AC Radio is because I still want to have the option to talk about whatever I want at any moment. So the reason why I won't change it to Fight Radio or MMA Radio or anything like that is because
got it.
Exactly. Like, you didn't come in here expecting me to bring up the NHL salary. If I'm AC Radio MMA, it's like, why is he talking about hockey? I want to keep myself still in a general lane. But, you know, if you use your eyes and your brain, you'll catch on very quickly what my channel is all about, obviously.
It's good, man.
But
you keep up the hard work. So once again, we got Adam here, AC Radio. If you guys like the channel, Freemium Podcast, subscribe, comment. You can rate us on Spotify, rate us on Apple Music. Feel free to share it with one of your buddies. And we're out of here. Thanks, bud.
Thank you, dude.